Hey everybody, this is Country Echoes. Today I'll be discussing whether or not ball pythons make good pets. So this video is the second installment in the series that I just started recently, starting with the Leachianus gecko. If you haven't checked out the video, Do Leachianus Geckos Make Good Pets? Make sure to go ahead and go check that out in the description, especially if you're interested in buying one. I'll leave a link in the description. But obviously, as you can see from the snake in my hand, today I'm going to be talking about ball pythons and their various pros and cons for whether or not they make a good pet. So I went ahead and set my ball python Jerry down just so you can kind of get a better appreciation for the size of this animal. And while I'm doing this, I'm going to go ahead and give you some basic facts on the ball python. So ball pythons originate in sub-Saharan Africa. So sort of a savanna, semi-tropical environment, not rainforest conditions, but kind of in the middle, similar to maybe like an African fat-tailed gecko, if you guys are familiar with their original habitat and their kind of natural environments, pretty similar to that of the ball python. In the UK, I believe these guys are called royal pythons, but here in the States, as you can see, he's balled up right now. We've so affectionately named them the ball python. In ball pythons, there's a pretty extreme sexual dimorphism, meaning the females are quite a bit bigger at adult size than the males will be. For a female ball python, you're going to be looking anywhere from 3 to 5 feet, which for a snake is really not that big, and for a male, anywhere from 2 to 3 feet. So depending on what you want, how big of an animal, you can really target. Do you want a really big snake or a relatively big snake? You can go with a female, which can get up to 5, or you can stick with a male like I have here and stay around under 3. So in front of me, I have Jerry, and he is a banana ball python. This is definitely not the original coloration of the ball python. This is a captive bred morph, just similar like to breeds in dogs. You have morphs and reptiles. And obviously this is nothing like the original coloration. I'll insert a picture of the original coloration of a ball python so you can get the idea, but I sort of thought that the browns and blacks and whites of a kind of a natural ball python were boring, so I went ahead and picked up a really beautiful snake with oranges and yellows and purples. It's very important to know that the ball python is not a venomous snake. It is a constrictor, meaning that when it does find a prey item, instead of biting it and injecting venom to kill its prey, it simply bites it with its teeth to maintain hold, and then wraps its body and constricts and squeezes the life out of its prey. So that is how a ball python obtains its food. And if you look closely here, right under his nostrils, those almost peach-colored pits, those are thermal sensors. So when you place a mouse or whatever food item you're feeding to your ball python, since that's a warm-blooded animal, it has lots of thermal radiation. Your ball python is able to sense and almost create like a thermal image, almost like a heat gun, supposedly, of its prey item, which is kind of a cool concept to think of, because they can, as soon as you set something warm into their terrarium, it just sets them off. They become instantly more active, and they can almost see the heat, which I think is a super cool concept. So now that you've learned some pretty basic information and background information on the ball python, I'm going to go ahead and start discussing the pros on this animal as a pet. Okay guys, so I'm going to go ahead and start off with the first pro. Ball pythons are incredibly easy to care for. They require not an insane amount of floor space for their terrarium. Like I said earlier in the video, the females are bigger, so they're obviously going to require a larger terrarium. But as adults, 30-gallon to 40-gallon will do the trick, which really isn't that big of a cage. You're not going to be taking up a lot of space. They don't require a super elaborate setup. They simply need a hide and a heat pad in a water bowl, preferably a type of substrate that can hold some humidity. I'll show you what I've got my ball python in just a second. But they do require a little bit of humidity because they kind of are from a semi-tropical zone, just that holds about a 60 to 70% humidity at a spike. So over the day it needs to flatten out to the 50s and 40s, but during those high humidity times, humidity of about 60 to 70% is necessary. Temperatures for these animals can be easily obtained with a thermostat connected to a Zoomed UTH or a under tank heater. I keep mine about 92 degrees, which is a pretty solid temperature for these animals. Easy to obtain, especially for those of you who have leopard geckos. You're pretty much used to that. So really easy to set these guys up. They do need a water dish just to soak in, because they kind of like water. It's kind of cool to watch. You need to ensure that the water dish you get for them isn't so deep that they can drown. Just a little dog bowl will do the trick. And like I said, a substrate that can hold some humidity, and they need a hide. These animals are ball pythons. They're kind of timid, I should say. That the timidity does not cause them to be like flighty or aggressive, but they will ball up when they don't feel secure, and they'll go into their hide. So you really do need to provide an opaque hiding place so they do feel comfortable. So another pro to the ball python is their ability to be handled. My ball python Jerry is so nice. Like, as you can tell, he's no aggression. He's never tried to bite me. He has hissed before, but that was kind of my mistake with inexperienced snake handler. But it wasn't a very aggressive hiss. It was just kind of a, hey, you need to quit grabbing me and quit pulling me out of my hide, which is understandable. Very, very calm snake. They feel really cool in the hand. They're not slimy. For some reason, a lot of people think that snakes would be slimy. They're not. They're kind of a glossy, leathery feel. It's really kind of a cool feeling, especially when they're sliding around on your hands. He's not a quick mover, meaning he's not constantly causing me to have to go hand over hand and hand walk him. As you can see, he just kind of balls up in my hand. And they're pretty forgiving. I make some handling mistakes, and he really doesn't jump or jolt. If they did bite you, I know it would hurt really bad, because they do have some teeth. Their teeth are designed to hold on to the prey, because they're not doing a lot of chewing. Obviously, they're opening their jaw bones and expanding their body so they can get that large food item down into their body. So their teeth are designed just to hold on, not for really chewing. So it would hurt really bad. So you do have to be careful with that. But so far, that hasn't been an issue whatsoever. Okay guys, so this is my current ball python setup. This is definitely more of a juvenile setup, but the premise and the basic setup will apply for an adult ball python. It is time for my ball python to get an upgrade. He's definitely long enough to be upgraded to about a 30-gallon size terrarium. I do prefer the front opening Exoterra tank, so I'll get probably one of the flat Exoterra terrariums, but for now I just have this, and he's been eating fine and exhibiting all natural behaviors and really no issue. So I'm going to kind of walk you through what I got here. So over here to the left I have like a Chinese food box with a hole cut in the front of it as his warm hide and humid hide. That sits directly over top of the heat pad, and like I said, I like to keep it at about 90 degrees, 92 degrees. And over here to the side I have the water dish and then a supplemental hide. This hide right here is primarily to help him get his shed off, because as you can see there's a lot of holes and indentions that he can latch his shed onto. And at the bottom I have some Eco Earth, and the lights just for video purposes. Alright guys, so now that you've seen their terrarium, you've seen how easy it is to set them up, and you should be getting the gist that they're very easy to care for. So that's by far the most important pro of any animal is the ease of care, because if it was so hard to care for, it might be much of a pet. So I'm going to use this third pro to kind of transition into con, in that ball pythons can live 30 plus years. Their metabolisms are incredibly slow. They can go months and months without eating. They're pretty hardy animals. If you provide them proper care, they're going to live a long time. So that can be good, that can be bad. So you just have to keep that in mind. The next con might not be for a con for everybody, but that you do have to feed them with small mammals, or I think small mammals is the only thing that I've heard of that people feed their ball pythons. I feed mice. Some people might not be a big fan of having to feed frozen or live animals to their pets, and that's totally understandable, and that's probably one of the main things that keeps people from wanting to get a snake. And that really doesn't bother me too much. That's kind of, it's nature, and that's kind of how it works. As cliche as that sounds, you have to, if you buy your animal, you have to do what it takes to take care of them. So that's something that you really have to consider when getting a snake. I think there's a type of snake called the grass snake or something like that, the green snake, and they eat like insects. But except for that one snake, you'll be hard pressed to find a snake that's not eating lizards or mice or rats, or you know what I'm getting at. I already kind of discussed the potential for pretty serious injury if a ball python does get a hold of you. I haven't heard much about ball pythons being very aggressive, so that shouldn't be too big of a concern, but you do need to keep that in mind, especially if you're getting this for a young child who might really be aggressive with the snake. That could lead to some aggressive retaliations from the snake. The thing that I really had a hard time with my ball python, and you might as well, especially if you're a new snake owner. I kind of had to learn all this by myself, but obviously with a little bit of reading. They can be hard to feed. This isn't associating with the fact that you have to feed them live or thawed out foods. I'm just saying that it's sometimes hard to get them to eat. Ball pythons will go off food occasionally in the winter months, and sometimes even during the warmer months, for weeks or months, or I've heard some cases of like 9 to 12 months, so almost a year or equal to a year. And that can be incredibly stressful for the owner. I bought my snake and I made the mistake of trying to feed him 72 or 48 hours after buying him, so that was not a good idea, especially when he was a juvenile alongside with he's being placed into a new terrarium. I'm trying to shove food in his face. And then he went off eating for about 3 weeks, and that was pretty concerning to me. So that's something you have to consider. You have to be able to deal with that kind of anxiety. Like, is he ever going to eat? Or if you're just more prepared than I was, you know that you have to give them some time. They don't require a lot of food. I feed mine like once every 10 to 14 days, so about once every 2 weeks, and he's growing at a really good pace. They're very hardy animals. You don't have to feed them a lot, but they're not going to die if they go off eating for a couple weeks, but it can be a cause for concern, and it's something you gotta consider. Alright guys, so the final con, it's really not that big a deal. They are nocturnal, so they're not going to be out and about like a bearded dragon in the daytime. I mean, no big deal. If you own an African fat-tailed gecko or a leopard gecko or crested, any of the mainstay popular animals, you know they're all out at night as well. That doesn't mean you can't get them out, but he is nocturnal, so that you got to keep that in mind. Alright guys, so to kind of summarize up whether or not these ball pythons make a good pet, absolutely. They make fantastic pets. He's probably one of my favorite animals. Handability is amazing. Ease of care, it's kind of crazy. I'll go on vacation and have a family member take care of him. They don't really have to do anything except for spray the top through the screen of his cage, because all my family is kind of spooked of the snake. They just simply put the nozzle on top of the screen and just spray, and he's going to be fine. Low maintenance, easy to handle, but you do have to consider the fact that you're going to be feeding this animal either dead or alive or dead prey, like mice or rats, or depending on the size of the snake, of course. So that's something you got to consider, as well as the fact that they do have teeth, and that could hurt. But all in all, fantastic pet. Alright guys, so that's going to do it for today's video. I thank you so much for checking this out. I hope you guys are enjoying these videos. I really think it's important for people to kind of get an honest opinion on whether or not an animal is going to be a good pet for them before they get it. Otherwise, you might be locked with an animal you don't want. But guys, thank you so much for watching. Remember to like, comment, subscribe, and turn on post notifications. That really helps me and helps you know when I've uploaded. So go ahead and do that, and I will see you on the next one. This is Country Echoes.